bargaining session. And we tentatively agreed on the collective bargaining agreement, okay? So I will go over the highlights of that agreement. But before we go on today's contract negotiations, we had a session about 2-3 weeks ago, at the most, where the county kind of shot down every single article with the exception of a few that we had that was open. They even came back to us with this ridiculous proposal as it relates to the disciplinary article, right? Where they talked about employees can be disciplined without having any support and documentation. It was ridiculous. So of course we didn't agree to that. In conversations that we had with the county administration and mayor about, the bad faith bargaining that labor or the county was doing, we kind of got everything back on one accord, on the right track, okay? So today, the things that we talked about today and the highlights of the contract, all right? So as it relates to the checkoff, which is Article 7, which talks about different benefits and programs and how the county basically collects dues and different benefits that we provide our folks through automatic deduction. So where it says here is, upon implementation of the enterprise resource planning system, the county shall notify and meet with the union to discuss the adding of additional payroll deduction slots. The union agrees to indemnify and hold the county harmless against any and all claims, suits, orders, or judgments brought or issued against the county as a result of any action taken or not taken by the county under the provisions of this article. So basically what's occurring is the county is moving into a new payroll system. So once that system is implemented, the additional benefits that we provide to folks, aside from what we already have as dues deduction or deductions, the payroll slots will be added once it's fully implemented, okay? Then it talks about the grievance procedure. So currently in the collective bargaining agreement now, the grievance procedure talks about 7 days. 7 days from occurrence and 7 days from the union of the employee knowing that a grievance occurred. Our problem and concern that we have with that is that employees doesn't necessarily know what their rights are. So a lot of times when we have conversations with them to identify the disagreements, there's such a large amount of time that's passed, right? So what the county did, or what we proposed to the county, is that, and this is consistent with a couple of other CBAs across the county, is that instead of it being 7 days, we'll move it to 10 calendar days. The county agreed to it, with the exception of step 4, which is the department director. That step, historically, we've always had issues with folks keeping their time limit. So we talked about the union having a one-time extension, since naturally if the county doesn't respond, the grievance just automatically kind of like moves to the next step. So what the county has done is they've agreed to change step 1, 2, and 3 from 7 to 10 days. And step 4, which is the department director level, they've moved it from 7 days to 15 calendar days, okay? As it relates to work in a higher classification, work in a higher classification is the OCL payment, where the issue that we've had with this is that departments identify employees to work in higher classifications, but then compensation comes back and says, well, we can't pay the employees what the stipulations of this article says if they don't meet the minimum qualifications. So after discussions that we have with the county administration and explaining to them our standpoint, what we explain to them is that, listen, the collective bargaining agreement does not say that you have to meet the minimum qualifications to qualify for OCL. It just says that as long as you're doing the work for X amount of time, that the county has to pay you. So essentially, the county and the administration agreed to that. So the new language to kind of strengthen it up, it just says departments shall screen employees to ensure they meet the minimum qualifications prior to assigning the higher level work. Additionally, employees must perform the full scope of the job. So what this means is that the department or the county cannot come back and say that because an employee does not meet the minimum quals, they don't pay them the OCL, they pay them lead worker. A lead worker is not created to do higher level work and be paid at a lower compensation level. So the contract language will be followed moving forward, and that'll address the issue with that, okay? As it relates to the disciplinary article, disciplinary action article. So we've changed language, just kind of incorporating what it currently says now. So the top part where it says the employee must be allowed the opportunity, if desired, to respond orally or in writing within a reasonable amount of time. We've scratched reasonable amount of time and made it no more than 10 days after receipt, which is the standard. And then the language that talks about ROCs, as you guys know, if you don't have any of the ROCs within a 2-year period of an ROC, that the record of counseling that you received is stamped no longer in effect. The new language talks about written reprimands. There was only one collective bargaining agreement across Miami-Dade County that talked about written reprimands coming out after 2 years, okay? So the new language that we've incorporated into this contract will read the following. Written reprimands shall be marked no longer in effect in the employee's departmental personnel file and not considered for progressive disciplinary action, after 2 years of good performance from the date of the final action of the written reprimand, during which an employee has not been the subject of progressive disciplinary action, further formal counseling, or does not result from a final disciplinary action that was reduced from a suspension, demotion, or termination via an appeal hearing. So what this means is that as long as the employee has no other issues through this 2-year time period, that the written reprimand will come out. However, in the instances where we go to arbitration and the arbitrator says, well, the person never had any past discipline or anything, so I think that a suspension was too harsh, let's reduce it to a written reprimand. That would not apply. It talks about only the final action, the initial final action being a written reprimand that will come out, okay? And then it just goes down also to say documents directly related to the disciplinary action report will be provided once at no cost to either the employee or the union after the final action. So what this means is that when we've identified that, the county probably didn't follow the due process, or we want to go to arbitration, then any and all public records related to this DAR will be provided free of cost versus what we do now having to pay for it, okay? Now we're going into Article 18, which is regular part-time status. Currently now, the one concern that we had that Lisa kind of touched on was the amount of part-time workforce that we have, where there's really no progression for them. So what we've added in this part-time language is current part-time employees that apply and meet the minimum qualifications for a job opening within their current classification and department will be given a courtesy interview for full-time employment, okay? Article 19, recruitment and employment. So this talks about, one thing that we've been doing since the past contract was we were able, just as kind of like a trial, to observe interviews, right? Because we've had folks that have complained about interviews being biased, folks already being selected before they get there. So we actually had the mayor to give us an MOU to observe interviews within our bargaining unit. So that's been very helpful. So that when employees, call us saying, hey, I was picked for this job, I was the best candidate, unfortunately, it's kind of been like a catch-22 because we're present. We're like, you didn't interview too well. So, now that they know that we're there, whatever it is, they feel that the process is a lot more fair. So the county has incorporated that language for us to observe interviews to make sure that the process is done thoroughly and properly, for us to basically be there to just make sure everything is done correctly, okay? Then getting into the economics. So, Article 27, which is the annual leave article. If you guys remember, presently now, the collective bargaining agreement says that you can only max out at 500 hours, right? Anything excess of 500 hours, you can have those hours not paid out, you create like a user and loser scenario. Some of the bargaining units, the ASME unions, with the exception of 121, which is water and sewer, we propose language where anything excess of 500 hours, if the employee chooses, will be paid out to the employee. County then came back with the proposal, well, we'll move it up to 750 hours, right? Out of the 10 bargaining units, there are 7 bargaining units that have already accepted this language. So what this means is that, effective upon ratification of this collective bargaining agreement, the applicable cap that an employee can accrue as it relates to annual leave is 750 hours. Anything excess of 750 hours, of course, you create a user-to-loser scenario. 500 of those hours, because of state statute, is all that goes towards retirement, okay? The additional 250 hours you can only receive upon separation from county service. For folks that are in the drop, at the time that you drop and you have 750 hours, those hours are there, but anything excess of 750 hours automatically is what? A user-to-loser scenario, okay? Are folks good from that standpoint? And I'll explain to you why. Initially, the proposal was, okay, let's get the excess hours paid out. After having conversations with both the budget department and the deputy mayor, who happens to be the budget director, it's not a cost neutral article or bargaining tool, right? Why? Because departments budget for an employee or their employees 2,080 hours each year. Anything access to 2,080 hours each year, full-time 80-hour work weeks for the 26 pay periods, will be an additional cost. So it's an additional cost that the department or the county has budgeted for. That's why it wouldn't be a cost-neutral proposal. So, because the county gave us the language where you're able to take those 48 of the 96 hours that you received in sick leave, and on your conversion date, instead of it rolling over into annual, you can have it paid out. The natural remedy to the issue of, the annual leave would be to increase it, where employees can still take the 250 hours and you still have to use it or lose it scenario. It's just at a higher level versus the 500 hours. So does everybody get it? Go ahead, Marco.
Okay, so you're saying after, I really don't get that.
Okay. No problem. So let me read it to you, and then if
Okay.
you have any questions from there, we go from there. So, what it says now is number 3, the new language will say, the maximum accumulation of annual leave shall be, it used to say 500 hours, now it says 750 hours.
700.
And will be paid upon separation. However, only a statutory maximum of 500 hours shall be reported as covered wages to the Florida Retirement System, FRS, with the required contributions. If an employee is being paid annual leave as a result of entering the Deferred Retirement Option Program, DROP, the maximum payout of annual leave shall not exceed the statutory maximum of 500 hours. An employee having a balance in excess of the maximum accrual of 750 hours at the end of their leave year will forfeit and lose such excess annual leave accrual. Employees already in the drop upon ratification of this agreement may receive a payout of up to 750 hours of annual leave at the time of separation of employment, reduced by any annual leave payout received at the time of the initial drop payout. The application of the provision will be in accordance with the current Miami-Dade County policies and procedures. Does that answer your question, or you still need me to elaborate?
Can you give us an example?
Gotcha. Okay. So for instance, if you have, let's say you're a 30-year employee, okay? Presently now, all the collective bargaining agreements, before they even came up with this 750, capped you out at annual leave at 500 hours. Why? Because state law says you can only accrue up to 500 hours in annual leave that's credited towards your retirement, okay? Now, the proposal that we proposed was, okay, folks, a lot of folks have the use it or lose it scenario. In most cases, they don't want to take the leave. They would rather have it paid out, right? The county is saying now, from the budget office, that because they budget full-time employees to own each and every full-time employee to only be paid 2,080 hours, any type of excess payout will be an additional cost, right? That they naturally wouldn't budget for, they didn't budget for, right? So what they're saying is to keep it cost neutral and to keep it flat, they'll move the applicable cap of 500 to 750 hours. Whereas 500, because of state law, is still the only thing that goes to Tallahassee for the FRS. The additional 250 hours you only receive once you separate from county service. If you happen to go over, you're one of those employees that come to work every single day, and you use all type of days on the book with the exception of annual leave. Anything excess of the 750 hours, you still have a use it or lose it scenario. Just for the sake of receiving the additional 250, you only get it when you separate. Okay? As it relates to the sick leave, and why you always talk about those two articles together is because they dovetail each other so close. Remember, you accrue 96 hours of sick leave every fiscal year. What the CBA says is that 48 of those sick leave hours roll over into annual. In the new contract, employees will be able to have either the entire 48 hours, because there's stipulations as it talks about your years of service, or a portion of those unused hours paid out to you before it's converted into your annual leave. So before your conversion date comes, if you tell your boss or your DPR, listen, I want to have those hours paid out to me versus rolling over, you get a check for those hours. So you're still accruing 750 hours, but you still get a payout of the portion that would naturally roll over into annual. And you can do that every single conversion year. Okay? We're good on that?
Yeah.
I can move on. All right, perfect. So uniform allowance would apply to folks in the solid waste department that's in the position. I'll just read the article. So it says, Article 47, uniform allowance. Solid waste department employees in the classification of automotive equipment operator 1 and semi-skilled laborer assigned to the department's cart crews that are provided uniforms will be eligible to receive an annual $300 uniform maintenance allowance payable in January of each year. Employees terminating their employment shall be required to return such uniforms prior to receiving their final paycheck, or the department shall deduct the cost of such uniforms from the employee's final paycheck. So these are our folks that kind of work hand in hand with the solid waste folks over in 3292. That's they deal with trash and everything else. So that's why they got a uniform allowance, because it kind of mimics what they do on the solid waste side of the house. Okay. Then we're getting into Article 49, which applies to several folks that's here today. So Article 49 is the salary supplements article. So the following classifications upon ratification will receive a salary supplement, all right? So it says, full-time bargaining unit employees in the internal services department in the classification of heavy equipment technician, welder, maintenance repairer, automotive, and heavy tire repairer who are performing automotive mechanic related duties on construction, quarry, landfill, and garbage sanitation type equipment shall be eligible to receive the equivalent of one pay step. Number 6, full-time bargaining unit, employees in the fire department in the classification of fire safety specialist 1 who have attained and maintained State of Florida Fire Inspector 2 certification shall receive a 1 pay step increase above their regular rate of pay. Number 7, full-time bargaining unit employees in the Parks, Recreation, and Open Spaces Department, PROS, in the classification of PROS Natural Areas Attendant and Automotive Equipment Operator 1, that are assigned to and actively participate in prescribed fire operations, ignition, holding, mop-up, monitoring, and any other related tasks shall receive a 1 pay step supplement for only those hours actually worked at a designated fire event. Number 8, full-time bargaining unit employees in the medical examiner's office in the classification of forensic evidence recovery technician, forensic photographer, and more technicians shall receive a 1 pay step supplement. 9, full-time bargaining unit employees in the Miami-Dade Corrections and Rehabilitation Department in the classification of correction technicians, CT, assigned to Intake Release Bureau, IRB, and the Court Services Bureau shall receive 1 pay step supplement. 10, full-time bargaining unit employees in the Animal Service Department in the classification of ASD Animal Care Specialist, ASD Customer Service Clerk, ASD Shelter Clerk, which is a receiving clerk, Veterinarian Technician, ASD Adoption Clerk, ASD Transport Operator, ASD Transport Specialist, ASD Enrichment Specialist, Veterinarian Assistant, ASD Disposal Technician, and Maintenance Mechanic shall receive a 5% pay supplement. Last but not least, number 11, full-time bargaining unit employees in the Solid Waste Management Department in the classification of Solid Waste Enforcement Officer shall receive a 3% pay supplement. Okay. As it relates to Article 56, which is the county group health insurance, it says, and this just talks about reopeners, where it kind of gives us more leverage in reopening years, but I'll read all the new underlying areas and I'll kind of explain it to you guys, okay? 1 second, let me go to it. Okay, so it parties agree that all bargaining unit employees will be offered the opportunity to participate in group health care insurance and flexible benefits programs pursuant to law and in accordance with all rules, regulations, and procedures pertaining hereto prescribed by the employer and all applicable federal, state, and local laws. The change that it says employees will be required to pay premiums as listed in addendum 2 for the cost of single coverage for this plan, which we all know. And then it says the county will include a select advantage HMO, healthcare group insurance option, and the first choice advantage HMO healthcare group insurance plan option. Effective January 1st, 2020, and thereafter, the county will only offer the first choice advantage and select advantage plans to employees hired after January 1, 2020, and their dependents under the county's group health care program. Those who reside outside of Miami-Dade County will be offered the select advantage HMO plan. All other medical plans will no longer be made available to new hires and their dependents. The away from home program will still be made available to dependents enrolled in the Select Advantage HMO, subject to the existing terms and conditions. So all that kind of talks about is like we had before, that new employees will only be offered pretty much these 3 plans. If they live in Dade, you have 1 or 2 choices. If you live outside of Dade, the only option that you would have is Select Network. That is the huge cost savings, which is how we were able to keep coverage at the same level without having to raise the premium costs, okay? And then it says the mayor of Miami-Dade County will maintain a healthcare cost containment committee work group, which will include representatives from labor and the union, okay? So that's currently what we have now, where we discussed how we could, offset costs without having to change the benefits level, which is how we came up with the Select Network, okay? And then it says here, number 10, the union and the county hereby direct the employer designees to implement the cost containment measures set forth in addendum 1, Group Healthcare Cost Containment Initiatives. A mini open enrollment for the medical plans only will be held as soon as administratively feasible for employees to reevaluate and participate in plan options for plan year 2020 in light of initiatives being implemented as per addendum Group Healthcare Cost Containment Initiative. So let me tell you what that means. After ratification of the collective bargaining agreement, the county will have a mini enrollment for all the folks that fall under our bargaining agreement or anybody else that settles their contract after. Presently now, what they're saying is that employees, of course, you have health care, but if there were any cost savings or different plans or changes, not changes to plans, but cost changes to plans, where it may be $30 cheaper now, but because we don't have a contract, you're kind of paying the old contract cost, that this wouldn't be made effective or made available to you until after the contract is ratified. You will go in and make a selection of what type of health care you would want. So do you guys understand that? So still, you get all the benefits that you have now, but let's say if there was something that was implemented where the current plan that you have may be $30 cheaper now, after the cost containment committee went and reviewed it and said, hey, you can shave off costs here, this, that, and so forth. You won't get any of those benefits of those new initiatives until after the contract is ratified and you have the mini enrollment, and they will have, especially for the folks in this bargaining unit as well as anybody else that has ratified their contract. And then once you make those selections, any new initiatives will be made available to you, okay? Then it also says effective January, I'm trying to go to the part, so it says effective January 1, 2020 or after January 2020 upon ratification of the 2017 through 2020 collective bargaining agreement, the Miami-Dade County group health care plan shall be amended as follows. Participation and acceptance of the 2020 cost containment plan redesign initiatives that are expected to reduce the plan's expenditures will allow premiums to remain flat for the duration of the collective bargaining agreement. The contributions for insurance premiums are listed in addendum 2. Okay, so it just talks about the cost being flat, and that's pretty much it. Okay. Then we go into Article 62, which is services to the union. Article 62, the changes, I will read as follows. So now we will be given all copies of bargaining unit lists will be made available or will be provided, in Excel form. Number 11, the county agrees to furnish the union with a copy of employees covered by the bargaining unit identified as dues paying quarterly in Excel format at no cost to the union. And then it says, upon request from the union, the county agrees to furnish the union with a copy of all part-time bargaining unit employees and hours worked for the fiscal year. Number 13, in an effort to ensure proper training for union stewards in the administration of the contract, the county will release up to 10 stewards twice a year to attend 2-day training sessions provided by the union without loss of pay in accordance with Article 32, legal pay for a period of no more than 4 days. The union shall provide 10 working days notification prior to the start of the release date to their respective departments, Human Resources Division, and the Labor Relations and Compensation Division of the Human Resources Department. All right, so Article 35 and Article 43 is going to go together, okay? Article 35 is holidays, Article 43 is wages. So initially we talked about the floating holidays, right? You know that you get all your different holidays that the county pays for, that you guys get the paid holidays, and then you got that one floating holiday. So initially when we started contract negotiations, the county came back and said, hey, we'll give you one additional floating holiday. However, and I'll tell you why they dovetail each other. So John, I'm gonna jump back and forth. Article 43 is the wages article, okay? So as it talks about wages, the county's initial proposal was a 0 in year 1, a 0 in year 2, and a reopener in year 3. Then after we were successful in having them to vote down the homestead exemption expansion, the mayor came back with a 0 in year 1, a 0 in year 1, a 1 in year 2 that's effective back to October 1st of 2018, and then a reopener in year 3. After discussions and everything else, you know, the county came back after they got proposals from other bargaining units with the, okay, a year 3 COLA would be a 1% that's effective July of 2020. So after having discussions and talks with the county administration, and you know, us basically telling them, listen, you know, we are grateful for the different supplements that we were able to get for our folks and all the different things, but you know, our folks, you know, one thing that kind of binds everybody together is the COLA, right? As well as, you know, the different things that's kind of universal across the bargaining units that I'll get into a little later. But, you know, folks look to their COLA, right? So, you know, we asked, well, what's something that we can do? You know, I'm like, listen, you know, that July 1st COLA of 1% is not even a full 1% because there are 4 quarters in the year, and that's the latter part of the year that you'll be receiving the 1%, which is actually really only a 0.25% raise. So the budget office, after crunching the numbers, came back, and after we pretty much kind of, you know, went back and forth with the county and said, they're out of the 10 bargaining units, of which the 5 that settled their grievance, those folks have accepted the 1% that's effective July 1st of 2020. Our bargaining unit, however, they offered us today a 1% that'll be effective the first pay period in April of 2020, which is about 3 or 4 months away. So I said to them, listen, you know, we need to give something else to our folks because, you know, that's still, you know, when you look at the 1%, that's still, you know, not a large amount of money. So what the county has agreed to do is, rather than giving us the additional floating holiday, we'll be receiving 3 floating holidays that employees will receive every fiscal year, okay? So you'll receive the additional 2 floating holidays, which will give you the paid holidays plus the 3 floating holidays. What they've also done is the $50 that you guys get every 2 weeks, which went to $60, they've changed it to $70. So upon ratification of the contract, you'll get $70 every 2 weeks. As it relates to your pay steps, now everybody has to, this is something that I had to break down with the committee today when we tentatively agreed on the collective bargaining agreement stack. This is the first time that the county has ever agreed to change the pay scale or pay steps for anybody in any contract or across the county. Typically what occurs with COLAs, they give you a percentage of a COLA and that's all you get, right? There's no change to the pay plan, there's no change in your max out. It's either you get this COLA or you don't get anything, right? So the fact that we were able to actually get everybody's pay scale maxed out at one additional pay step, you know, is a huge victory for folks. When you do the math on, even if we would have gotten a 4 or 5% raise, the average person in our bargaining unit that doesn't make that much money, you know, a 5% raise for them is less than $100 in some cases, right? So when you look at it from a standpoint of folks getting the $70 every 2 weeks versus the 50, plus the additional 2 floating holidays, plus the additional pay step that everyone receives, as well as the 2% increase, you know, we did really well in this collective bargaining agreement, you know, including the folks that, you know, God be with them, that do those dangerous jobs that we were able to get hazardous pay for. But at least for the issues that kind of is common among all of us, you know, that's a large amount that we were able, millions of dollars that we were able to get our folks through this collective bargaining process. So basically what the county has agreed to in addition to those 3 floating holidays is whoever was due for a merit increase or that longevity bonus back in 2018, it will be retroactive, okay? So what that means is that 1% in year 2 is retroactive back to October 1st of 2018, as well as that longevity step number 3 will be retroactive back to 2018 as well. So if you were maxed out and your anniversary date occurred through that time period, of course, once you get your performance evaluation and you get a minimum of a satisfactory, because remember, it's a merit step, it will be retroactive back to 2018. So it won't be prospective for those folks, it'll be retroactive back to when your anniversary date will have been. So does folks follow, right, why those 2 articles kind of dovetail each other? Okay, are we good to keep going?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then it talks about term of agreement and reopening. So this is where it kind of gets, and this is the last one, and then we'll kind of recap everything else that we've done so far. Okay, so it talks about Article 75, term of agreement and reopening. So I'm just gonna read the underlined area. What's changed is upon ratification by the union and approval by the Board of County Commissioners of Miami-Dade County, Florida, unless otherwise provided in any specific article, October 1st, 2017, and continue to September 30th of 2020. The economic benefits of this agreement shall be applicable only to bargaining unit employees employed on or after the date of ratification. And then it says, either party shall have the right during the term of this agreement to reopen this agreement only with respect to classification consolidation studies, or the county pay plan redesign, or the enterprise resource planning system, which is ERP, which again is the new payroll system that the county is doing. And then the last underlined portion says the county and the union may mutually agree to reopen Article 56 group health insurance of this agreement to negotiate only cost containment